All right, should we jump in?
Let's jump in.
All right. So today we've got an interesting thing to talk about. So during a lot of my research, learning more about building a business and also like a lot of this like personal growth kind of reading that I've been doing and stuff, this idea of building a company culture has popped up a bunch of times, and I kind of dug into that. And it sort of clicked for me. There was so many similarities in how a company culture is built. So we're going to relate that to how graffiti culture, there's connections between how a company creates a culture within its business, employees and team, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And there's connections with that in the graffiti culture. And then you can break that down to how crews have a culture within their crews. And then I have a feeling that individual contributions will probably be covered during these conversations. But I thought it'd be cool to start with one, talking about what a company culture is in terms of the business sense. And the reason that I think it could be interesting is because it's so deliberate. Like they have a set plan on what they want their culture to be. And so how you build a company culture is you create an environment that everybody on the team is invested and in the same kind of mission statement for the business. So all the employees are on board with the core values of the company, the mission of the company. So what ends up happening is you have this kind of like self-regulating thing to where, let's say, for example, you have 20 employees, right? And you have a super strong company culture, and then you bring in somebody that's the wrong fit. That person's generally not going to fit in because everybody's on board with the company culture. So like, let's say they fulfill orders right away, or they come in on time and all that stuff. And somebody comes in and they're like, fuck it, man. You know, it doesn't matter if it goes out a few hours late or he comes in 15 minutes late. Like somebody within that team is going to check that person and be like, look, you know, that's not the way we do things around here. We do this and that. And so it creates an environment to where the leaders of the team or the leaders of the company can trust their employees to do the right thing. So a great example that I heard the other day in that book I'm trying to finish is I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay. And he was talking about how he went and visited, I think it was a hotel chain, and they ordered room service, and it was like 15 minutes late or something. And the higher ups would have never known that happened. The guy that messed up the order, like it was some shit, like he spilled the coffee on the linens or something, and he had to change the linens out, and because they had a procedure, you know, this nice clean cart gets pulled up. So it took him 15 minutes to get the order put back together. He brought it, gave the guy the food and everything. The guy that received the order, he didn't tell the staff, you know, my order was 15 minutes late. But the next day, somebody in charge was like, hey, we heard that your order was late, so we want to comp you whatever for your inconvenience. So what that told the guy that received the order was that the employee took it upon himself to say, hey, look, this guy's order was 15 minutes late. I spilled coffee on the thing. And so the guy that received the order was really well versed in company culture. And he was like, that's a crazy good indicator that you have a super strong company culture, because that employee didn't have to tell you that he did something wrong. Right. But he did anyway. So what I thought about, and I was like, you know, what's so interesting is you build a company culture based on core values, right? Core values, a mission statement and all that. If you look at graffiti culture, it has core values in the rules of the game. So that's how we built, well, I say we, but the pioneers of the game, that's how they laid the groundwork for this culture, so that we can sort of navigate this like kind of chaotic environment that could very easily and does create a lot of tension between different riders, but we have a mutual understanding within the rules of the game. So I'm rambling for kind of a long time. So I want to open it up. But the idea that I thought we could talk about first was how just the understanding of the deliberate way of creating a culture within a business. It's so deliberate that they have like pretty much a set written rule thing or whatever it is, a mission statement that everybody's on board with. And we have that in the graffiti culture, but not everybody's on board. So it'd be interesting to talk about that, to see if a different sort of dialogue could pop up outside of what we've already talked about with the rules.
It's interesting because like the foundation that those before us did lay down was based on their experience, right? Just like anything else. They started from scratch with something and lived their days and their experiences and their missions and their faults and their mishaps and their successes, all the things, right? To kind of to pave that road and to lay down that blueprint, which is constantly being modified and a new draft is being written constantly, right? Just as we evolve and we learn new things and the laws change and the cities change and the limits are set at different heights and the bars raised and all those different things, right? But I think I'm trying to find if you had a specific question or how to kind of just turn this into the core values and how we can relate it to like the culture, right?
Well, I mean, I think if people understand like why all of this stuff exists, you could see that it everything runs way smoother. So when you have a company, a business that has a bad culture, what ends up happening is like employees come and go, people steal from the company, people don't care. And that's where it's kind of a little bit weird with the graffiti culture, because there's not really leadership per se. There's a certain amount of respect for older writers that I guess you could kind of relate to being, if you related it to a company, it would be sort of like you have older writers that would be sort of the ones that are supposed to pass down this information, which would be sort of like the same thing as how the company leadership sort of passes down the information. But if you really look at like a company that has a strong culture and you have everybody that's like really hyped on heading all in the same direction and everybody hyped on building the company. And when the company succeeds, everybody from the executives down to the janitors succeed, and they're all part of this thing together. So if you relate that to graffiti culture, imagine if we were all on board, if we were all on board with all of the core values of graph culture. And like, you can list the rules of the game, but it's just kind of like, it could be just don't be a dick, And like, that could kind of cover, if you're like out there and you're doing something, you're like, I'm kind of being a dick, then it's probably going against the core values of the culture. So
I get it now. I like how you've cut the ribbon. The story that you started with about the employee basically telling on himself and calling himself out about what he did. So that's defining integrity in the first place, is doing what's right when nobody's watching. So it's that example that's set by that employee should be the example set by the leader and the employer and the guy who's in charge and on point. Setting that example. Stronger than words is action in anything. So like you said, it's everybody being, singing the same tune, everybody being on the level together, from the custodian to the guy who's making the big sales, or from the kid who just got put down, who can barely do a whatever, to the cat who's been down for 30 years, who started this crew, who's world famous. Everybody has their gem. Everybody should be looked at like, you all matter. You matter, we all matter. We all have our different strong points, but we all matter here. But I think like what you started with, which is a great core value, and one of the many, doesn't necessarily mean number one, but they all kind of have an equal importance, is integrity. And I think that definition of that word is lost by many people. Like, we might have like a grasp on what that is, but if you really look it up and you look at what it really means to do what's right when nobody's watching, Are all your moves that you're making something that you would allow your daughter to watch? Is this something that you're proud of what you're doing right now? You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And if we were to kick off like a very strong core value in a company, a corporation, or a crew, anything, I think it's just that. I think how important it is to make every single member understand that they are just as important as the next guy.
Well, there's a lot of things to that. There's one thing that you said about when you relate it to the company, everybody from the executive to the janitor. So like everybody from the writer that's been smashing since the 80s to the guy that just started. There's obviously like a certain amount of admiration that gets put on a guy like Scene or, you know, somebody that's just been really laying the groundwork for a really long time. Like they're not equal in terms of what they've accomplished because the new guy is still new. But at the same time, if we're all part of the same thing. So like everybody from that legend or OG or whatever, he started in the same place as this young kid. So to show everybody that they're all part of the same team. And then, so I think we could probably talk about both of those things because the other thing that I want to make sure we don't lose is the doing what's right when nobody's watching. So like that could be applied to a whole lot of things. Like if you cap somebody kind of dirty, people are going to know that you did that. But if you leave all your trash at the train yard, they're not going to know that was you. So it's kind of easy to do that. But at the same time, like that stuff is very important. And that's kind of like a good indicator. Like if you steal from a graph writer or steal from a graph shop, you know, it's like people most likely aren't going to know that was you that did that. So it's easier to let those kind of things slide. I'm
glad you brought that up too. I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, it's fine.
When I said that this cat's just as important, the one who just came in, as the guy who, you know, started the crew, been running for 40 years, whatever. When I say that, I'm very specific. When I say that, I mean that cat who just came in. First of all, we all see something in this particular person. It's not just some random. You saw something. You saw this fire burning in him that you recognized in yourself when you were younger. You recognize that this kid recognizes and that he takes note and that he does not leave his fucking trash at the yard and he does not talk shit to this and that. And he's not that wild card from the jump. Like you already see that in him. So I'm not saying that this youngster has to walk on water, but you see something in him that's like, all right, he's a value here and he's listening. He's listening more than he's opening his mouth right now. That's important, right?
Yeah.
So I think not to discount how important it is to school kids on things that they just wouldn't think twice about. Like, you know, I'm young, I'm at the yard, I'm lit with my friends. Yeah, we fucking hit it. And you just like toss a can behind you, like fucking graph. Yeah, we out. Yeah. You know, like, sure, that happens. I get it. But it's like, I don't know how long it took me to like, to kind of grasp that concept when I was like 14, 15, 16. You just roll out the wall and then throw your bucket as far as you possibly can just so it's not in front of like that spot. It's like, no.
Yeah.
It's a principle here of like, so what I'm trying to say is obviously there's always like that piss and vinegar and that fire that you witness in the new guy or whatever you want to call him that makes you want to invest in this particular person.
And that would be for putting somebody on your crew.
Yeah.
But as far as like, nobody has to put you on in terms of the culture. Like anybody can be like, hey, I'm going to be a graffiti writer and start doing it. So like we really should also talk about those people because nobody's putting them on. Nobody's seeing, oh yeah, I want to invest in that guy. He's just a guy that just showed up.
Yeah.
Because that's the weird thing about like when you build a company culture, you're actually doing what you're talking about. You're bringing on the janitors and you're bringing on or bringing up the executives. You're doing all of those things with intention. Where it gets very complicated is the graffiti culture has like an open door. Like it doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but literally anybody can say, all right, I'm gonna go to Walmart and buy a can of Krylon and get my fan tip tags on somebody's garage door. And they're technically they're a graffiti writer, you know, they're not our choice per se, you know? So like
fucking vandal.
It's almost like reaching them is also equally important because they're the ones that need to know about this stuff. They're the ones that need to know. The person that you kind of say, you know what, I see something in this kid and I'm going to put him on my crew. Mm-hmm. That he or she is already heading in the right direction. These other people that are just like, I'm going to spray paint on somebody's car. You know? And it's like, you know, there's a reason why we don't spray paint on people. You don't see fucking cars driving down the freeway with tags all over them. Like it's a rare thing. Because we generally don't do that. We generally don't ride on people's houses. Mm-hmm. That's why you go through a neighborhood and it's smashed, but like there's no tags on people's houses. Mm-hmm. There's no tags on people's cars.
Right.
There's like going back to what you were saying, there's some, granted, we're out there fucking shit up, you know, but there's some integrity to it. There's some kind of like, you know.
And I think there's going to be a few who start off like the fucking Tasmanian devil just doing some shit that end up learning. But I think the mass majority of those who even kick off their you know, whatever with a spray can that way tend to weed themselves out. And you don't really need to spin your wheels and waste your energy and breath like trying to mold and like cultivate a relationship with someone like that. Like I think we've all witnessed that. Yeah. There might be like one random that just didn't know better, that was misguided, that got pulled in. But I think the majority of those who we see doing that and always have end up weeding themselves out anyway. They burn out quick. Yeah. You know? But yeah, there's something to be said about that when it comes to the difference between, you know, if you're building a company and establishing a reputation within your business, or you're just starting a crew. I don't know. I feel like they can be applied the same to both, because it's just like starting a company. You're not just hiring anybody, right? You're hiring somebody. You've had plenty of people come in the shop that wanted to work here that you were like, nope. And you already knew it before they even said the third fucking word. And then there's other cats that are like, yeah, you know, let's see how he does. Let's see what he can do. And you didn't regret it. There's one individual that you got working for you right now that's on fire.
Yeah, he's exactly the example. Like that whole thing where, and it was cool to hear that in the book where the guy was like, that's a really good example of a strong culture, because this kid does exactly that. Like I can think of a few examples where he was like kind of panicked. He's like, oh man, you know, this guy came in and I thought I gave him his change, and then he came back and said I didn't give him the change. Can you roll the tape back? And I rolled the tape back, and sure enough, like he gave the guy the change twice. It was like $7 or something, and he felt real bad. And I was like, hey, you know, just next time, well, I guess that's not a good example because you keep track of how much money is coming and going, but
just another example of his honesty.
Anything. Yeah,
and I mean,
and he's done other things too, where he didn't have to tell me. There's certain things that he did,
right?
Small things, you know, that he would be like, oh, look, you know, this and that happened. Stuff that I would have never known about. I'm like, oh, you know, I appreciate that.
That's awesome. He's more concerned with the future and investment in this company than he is of the pat on the back that day for that sale. He doesn't want to look like an idiot, but you know what? If this could fuck the company off or like start a pattern here, I'm going to call myself out again.
Yeah, that's the whole, like, I hope people are grasping what we're talking about, because like the more that people are on board with the core values of graffiti culture as a whole, the better everything is going to run. So if everybody's being accountable, you know, even companies with super strong culture, they come in, they get people that fly under the radar, you know, especially as a company gets bigger, and you'll have the wrong person there, and the leadership may not realize it for years, you know, and they got this guy that's kind of a cancer. We've talked about that. Yeah. And it's kind of, he's sort of spreading out throughout the culture a little bit until they realize that. And so what I think would be great for people to understand is the more of us that are on board with these core values of the graffiti culture in general, the smoother things are going to run for everybody, from the old school people all the way down to the people just coming in. Everything's going to be better.
Yeah.
There's going to be more yards. There's going to be more graph shops. There's going to be more trains.
Yeah.
You know.
And applying those same principles to your life and vice versa, it can only benefit. Like,
right.
Whatever your choices are, they've always been your choice. You're born with your free will. By no means do I feel like I have all the answers, but I know that I've experienced some things. And for all those who feel that the approach is fucking, we're just wild. We're just the wild ones that just get it and fucking run rampant through these fucking cities and do what the fuck we do. Like, all right, well, we'll see how, let's see how that works out for you guys. Let's see how it works out for everybody as a whole. But I think, like you said, everybody is pulling the example I heard recently was like pulling the rope the same way together as a team, right? Mm-hmm. If we all have that concept of respecting the culture as a whole, and we can never make somebody do something. We can never weed somebody out ourselves. They got to do that for themselves, right? But I think the stronger of the stronger of a stance and the more momentum which gathers from the collective thinking this like-minded, thinking the same way, those other things, it's just a matter of time before they weed themselves out. Like history will show that in all the different ways, right? So if we're to bring that to crews, right, and everyone being on the same page and how it can be related to, you can relate this to your business, your whatever, your organization. Everybody matters. Everybody has their strength. Everybody to be checked in on. Okay, like when you're first put down in a crew and they set their standards. This is how we run. This is how we do. This is what we don't do. Follow our lead. Here's your homework in a sense. Get this. This is something we can get to in a minute as well. Do this amount of this in this amount of time, and start with this and do that. All those things, right? So cool. There's like some sort of a bar set. There's some kind of a list of core values that crew believes in and wants to pass on to the next cat. Awesome. However, I've been taught that anything after the word but is bullshit. So I try to say, however, the maintenance of the core values is what is truly important. So let's use customers in a shop as an example as well as treating a crewmate. Every single customer should be just as important as the next guy. We had just had a discussion about this, and even though it's hard to grasp that concept, like this youngster who just came in, I'm supposed to treat him like my right hand over here that I've been running with for 20 years, that we've done all our dirt together, that we fucking this and that. Yeah, if he's part of this crew, if he's part of this company, absolutely. You got to set that example. Like the customer who's only buying a fucking $1.50 worth of tips right now, as opposed to this dude who's spending a G in my store and fucking, in 5 minutes. Yeah, they both matter. There's no telling where that one cat who just bought that one streak and how many people he's going to tell and how many more times he'll be back in the shop over the next 20 years. He might be your best customer overall, spending more money than this dude who drops a G every time he comes in that one every 6-month visit, whatever, right? That youngster, that crewmate who just got put on that you see something in enough to be at the table. He might bring this fucking crew to a whole nother level one day. You have no idea, but investing in somebody, it's like respecting somebody until they give you a reason not to. You invest in someone. Like, yeah, you invest in every single customer until you catch this cat fucking trying to steal something. Or you invest in this youngster until he tries to piss on everything you guys have been doing for him. I mean, there's definitely going to be a cutoff. There's always got to be a point where you cut the cancer before it spreads to the next 3 guys who are fucking about it, right? But what I'm trying to say is how important it is that you remember that those values, those principles that we set from the very beginning are constantly maintained.
What would be interesting to see a crew, and I don't know how many crews actually do this, like, you know, you have crews that are like, this is like a piecing crew, and this is like a bombing crew, this is a tagging crew, this is a tag banger crew. Like, I've never really been in a crew that when I got put on, they really ran down the mission statement. Like, have you been in a crew that actually did that?
If they did, it was brief and was not, brought back to my attention numerous times. Like, it may have been like the fire from the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, don't quote me on this because I wasn't always in a clear mindset, but I do not believe that those values were instilled and consistently checked on and maintained.
Right. So, like, my experience was, and I have to assume that the crews that I was part of, the leadership had a set vision on how that was going to work. But it was sort of like, I was kind of under the impression that, like, you were sort of taught the mission statement as you went. So it was like, hey, this isn't right. Or, as you fucked up, you were kind of like steered back in the right direction. I always thought, like, once we started tackling this topic, I thought it would be interesting to see a crew, like, so let's say you're the leadership of a crew and you really want to have, like, you embrace this idea of building a strong culture within your crew. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting because some people say you should and some people say you shouldn't. But as far as, like, if you're going to start a business, to write out a business plan and have it in writing so you can kind of refer back to it. Other people write out the core values, maybe do both. So everything is, like, documented. Mm-hmm. So, like, they can refer to a list and say, okay, here's what we're about. Here's our core values. This is our mission. This is where we want to get. These are some of our future goals. I don't know that crews actually do that. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a crew that could refer to an actual living document. Mm-hmm. I think it would be interesting to see a crew do that because, well, a couple of things. If a crew were to do that, and actually we did that with Cut's crew. We have a pretty detailed document. But let's not talk about that. I mean, it would be interesting to see a crew that did that. And the other thing that came up in that book was the guy was talking about that hotel where the employee did that cool thing. He started investigating that company and talking to people and saying, like, you guys have a strong culture. Like, how did you do this? And it was like, they had a mission statement that everybody in the company wrote together. So the guy was like, everybody? And he said, yeah. And he's like, the people that clean the rooms, and the executives. And he said, yeah, everybody participated in writing this mission statement. So it, like, really helped get everybody on board.
Right.
So I think it'd be really interesting for a crew to do something like that, like to build such a strong culture. And a lot of crews do have that. You meet a lot of people from crews that everybody's heading in the same direction and they have, like, a really strong culture within the crew. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if it could be stronger if they implemented some of these kind of, like, business ideas where it's sort of like, and when I say business, a lot of people are kind of, like, turned off by that. Like, it's like they associate corporations with greed, and it's like, it's just paperwork, man. Yeah, it's like it doesn't automatically mean
doesn't have to go that dark.
It's like doesn't matter. Sure. But the point is, like, a lot of times crews are started and they're like, these are the homies, these are people that I write with, so let's start a crew, and they pick an acronym, and that's where it starts. But what if a crew started and they were like, this is our mission, this is what we want to do, everybody's on board with the mission, and see where that takes us. That's a strong culture within that crew. And then how that could spread to the culture within the graph scene, because if you see a crew where everybody is on board and heading in the same direction, it seems like it could, just like a negative thing could spread, a positive thing could spread throughout the culture when we do that as an example, you know?
Mm-hmm. And when we're all on board, meaning like we're all on board to help the culture in a whole survive, not we're all doing the exact same thing, obviously.
Right.
It's like supporting your neighborhood, shopping at the businesses that are on your street and on your block, and supporting that particular corner of your world, you know, your culture, your neighborhood, your whatever. You're constantly feeding, you're constantly attempting to be a part of the rejuvenation process, and everybody to be, it'd be very interesting to see the origin story starting with the mission statement. Like somebody was so focused and clear about like what they were trying to do when they put people on board with this and what we wanted to do about it. Where is our culture lacking, or what are our strong points, and how can we be of value to this culture or this corner of the world where we're at, where we have a pulse right here. So if we were to look back, I would think that some of the strongest crews today that are surviving and that are fucking still just lacing shit, killing it, that are still like very strong beacons and leaders and examples. Was there a mission statement set from the very beginning? Was it maintained? So let's just say there's a mission statement, okay? Let's say it's as poetic as could possibly be, and it's on every fucking wall and on flags and on banners and T-shirts and stickers, and we got it all, right? But where are we? And everyone's got it memorized, and like I said, they can just like they can spit this at you in an instant. Cool. But where it really counts is how are they applying it to their life? How are they really putting this into full effect right now and making this a fucking reality, right? So are some of these guys that we've looked at in the past that are still doing things today that are inspiring me even more today than they did when I picked up my first can? Did they have that kind of mission statement, or were they simply one of the selected few that were in a tight organization or crew of like-minded affiliates that had that fucking drive and that passion and setting that bomb example constantly? Because that exists, and that did exist. It doesn't exist as much today, I believe. In again, I think it's something that birthed the world we live in today that you just can't duplicate. You know, there's nothing like the classic, right? There's nothing like the first. But what I'm trying to say is absolutely how important it is to have that mission and to acknowledge that and everyone be on the same page with that. But maintaining it, meaning if you didn't have that select group that were all about it and motivated and just driven, to check back with that mission statement on a regular basis, you know, not just to have it memorized, but okay, so how are we applying that in our life today? How is each member applying that into your work, into the way you're representing this crew? You know, let's go back to that. And it goes back to leadership too, right? I think that's been a lost thing as well. I think a lot of crews have had their challenges, just like any business or corporation, where it's like, dude, I can't even fucking stand this anymore. I can't understand how these cats are doing this and these cats are doing that. And there's beef within the fucking crew, and people are talking shit within our organization. And it's like, okay, well, like, I believe that that's inevitable in any relationship, in any family, in anything. You're gonna butt heads. Things are gonna fucking happen. However, if you were to, from the beginning, consistently check in with that core value, that mission, where people are at, how people are feeling, you're not going to fall so far off the tracks. You're not going to get so far off the path. You're going to be able to ring it back in fairly quickly, find a solution. You know, like, instead of just going back and forth about the problem. What's my part? What's their part? What's the solution? That's where all the time should be spent.
Yeah, well, that's also part of like why companies with a strong culture, they run better, because it's, in a way, it's self-regulating, because everybody being so on board with a mission, that stuff is implemented on a daily basis. So granted, the leadership should check in and maintain it. But at the same time, it's like, if you get everybody super on board with that mission, they're going to want to do all that stuff. So,
but self-regulated because it's consistently checked in on, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
because it can't.
You don't want to have like, I guess it's a kind of a fine line. So like, you build the culture. Like, I'll take my company for example. Like, I've been doing the best I can to build a strong culture, even though like we're not a big company. But I keep an eye on things. But you don't. I mean, it's like a fine line. You don't have to like micromanage people and like constantly be like, "Hey, are you doing X, Y, Z or whatever?" But like, you just kind of watch and see what's happening. See if the mission is still there.
Yes.
You know, and the leadership is also like a really good thing to discuss, because I think a lot of people have a misconception of what a leader really is. Like, there's a boss and there's a leader. And like, I know boss is like this term that people are kind of glamorizing, but you don't want to be a boss. Like, a boss is somebody that sits back and doesn't do shit and tells people what to do. A leader is out there in the trenches with people, is in the front line, you know, like leading the team, you know. Like, granted, if you're an old school writer and you're leading a crew, it doesn't mean like you have to be climbing on the billboards with these youngsters, but like, you're not just sitting back and making phone calls and telling people what to do. Like, you're out there leading. And I had a guy in here, he's an old writer, like, he was talking about a crew that he's from, and it's a really old crew. And he was saying like, God, it's just crazy. Like, you know, the leaders, they don't do anything until somebody does something, and then they want to come in and you know, and tell people not to do it this way and not to do it that way. And it's like, why the fuck haven't you been leading these things the whole time? Like, then this youngster wants to get this project going, and now you're jumping in and getting in the way, and nothing gets done. So it's like, I think people have a misconception of what a leader is. And like,
there's something to be said about, okay, there's the original that laid the foundation, that sparked this fire, that you can consider the leader, the originator, the boss of that crew, that group, whatever. Beautiful. That's what's up. That's how it gets going. Further down the line, and this happens, when, like I had just kind of touched on very briefly, shit happens. Shit hits the fan. Things get live. Things get real. Life happens. People have other priorities. Other things are going on where the torch needs to be passed, or at least considered to be passed. That, you know, there's usually that leader and that right-hand man. And then at some point, perhaps that right-hand man takes the lead and he's calling the shots. And this cat's not getting in. This cat's got to be talked to. We need this more. We need less of that. Whatever that is, right? But I think there is something to be said about when somebody is appointed, like, we see these qualities in you, we know that your intention is pure and that you're invested, like we spoke of the youngster who's working here. We can see that you are invested in the good of this company and the growth and what's coming, and less about you getting that pat on the back right now. This is more about the collective and everybody as a whole. That's the guy that you want to appoint to be putting in his 2 cents. The cat who's in the corner raising his hand saying, I'm the leader, I'll be the leader. That typically, from my experience, is not the guy you want, because his intentions are not the same. I'm not going to say they're wrong, they're bad, they're shit. They're just probably not what you're looking for. And there's something to be said about our experience with that. It's like when you see somebody who thinks, I should be, I'm the one, then you tend to see them weed themselves out in those ways where they're not in the trenches, they're not on the front lines, but they sure as hell got a lot to say when they open their mouth. I think anybody would agree with this had they experienced it or are experiencing it at this moment. But you tend to find the one who raises their hand a little too high might not be the right fit. But the cat who kind of sits back and is like humble about it. See, that's just it. The humility, how important being humble, being positive. You know, that humility is where this whole thing started. Like, that's why you treat the new cat the same as you do the oldest, is because of that humility. Because you see it goes beyond, I see a bit of myself in that cat. Like, yeah, you also see that he's just getting cracking. He's a rookie and he's got that fire and he's got all these things in him and you have so much you can teach him and so many things he can teach you. That's the other thing about humility is how much you can learn from the dude who's only been here for a minute, as much as you can from your right hand that you guys have done everything together and you've rode with, right? There's always something you can learn. Something we've touched on before is just as much as the things you insist on, the things that are the non-negotiables, the risk versus the asset. So it's like everybody is an asset, and you know, okay, so overall having a positive attitude, feeling grateful for everybody at the table, feeling grateful for the position you're in with that crew, that everybody's come together for a reason, and that there's something that's going to come from this, that everybody is an asset. Everybody is more of an asset than a risk. You don't treat somebody like they're a risk in the sense of like just shut your mouth, you got nothing to offer, anything you do or say may fuck us somehow. But like this kid or this woman, this new individual sitting at our table is an asset one way or another. We've seen something in them. Another thing that I definitely wanted to touch on was how important I believe the success of any crew would be, first of all, like we've said, the relationship you have with each individual, that you get to know each individual, and then the sacrifices that everybody makes to set ourselves apart from others, not to be better, superior, but to succeed in whatever it is, the value or whatever we want to bring to this culture. The small sacrifices we make instead of doing what the normal guys are out normal, what the average cat is out there doing tonight, fucking drinking and partying and doing the self-seeking type of things for just me, but like staying home and improving this and that because I want to bring this to the table next week and try to help our crew and ultimately our culture improve on this one thing. I see you do it all the time. I see myself do it. I see a lot of people that I look up to do that. They stay home and perfect something so that, because they know that in a week from now or a month or a year, whatever, how that's going to benefit us in a positive way, what that's really going to do for us. And this is not a way I've lived my whole life. This is something new to me as well, but I see the benefit. I see the reward in what an asset living that way really is.
You had talked about humility. I think that's something huge to, like, I think we could talk about that even more because
Okay.
Have you ever met somebody that you kind of, that just completely shattered what your perception was going to be of that person? Like, I don't know if I should name his name, but like Script, he just passed away. I didn't have like a preconceived notion about him, and we put him on an art show, and he had like a big following and he was super talented and everything. So I guess I had like kind of an expectation that he was going to be sort of, not cocky or anything, but just, I didn't expect the level of humility that I got when I met him. Like he showed up here and he was with his mom and he was just so fucking incredibly humble. Like he was grateful for, for being a part of this. And, at the time, he had like way bigger following. He was way more well known than our shop was, but he was very grateful that we put him in this show. And I was very grateful that he was down to be in the show,
Yeah.
So it's like when you meet somebody that's truly humble, it's often surprising, especially if there's somebody that has like a high, status in the culture, and you meet him and you're like, fuck, dude, like I didn't expect to be treated like with that level of respect from somebody like that. Or you hear it from other people, like young writers, when they meet an older writer and they're like, yeah, that guy, it was crazy. Like he just treated me like everybody else. He was super humble. Didn't make me feel like I was inferior to him or her. And I think that goes a long way in this idea of building a culture. Because if you treat everybody with humility, And fucking Google what humility is. Read it. Don't think you know what it is. Like, understand what it really is. And if you actually treat people and treat yourself with this level of humility, like the appreciation you're going to get from everybody, people in the crew, people in the culture, individual writers, anybody that comes across you, you know, if you truly carry yourself in a truly humble way, and not this buzzword idea of being humble, it's going to go a long way in building the culture, whether it's the graffiti culture, whether it's the crew culture, whether it's just you as an individual writer, you know?
No, what a beautiful example, and love and respect to Script, his family, and all those closest. Very, very unfortunate loss. Absolutely right. Not only understanding the definition of humility, but applying it to your life and how you treat everyone everywhere you go.
And being it.
And being it. What a beautiful example of having his mom with him at that show and treating you the way he treated you. I mean, those are examples you can't fake. That's how that cat probably walked.
Well, I know. I mean,
time.
that's the only interaction. I mean, I think I met him that day that he came in to bring his work, and that's when he had his mom with him. And then I think he was at the show, and maybe we met another couple times or whatever. And you just get this, and he's an example, but like you can see it in people's faces, you know, in their expressions and their body language, that they're not pretending to be humble. They're not. And that's the impression that I got from him. I'm not going to pretend that I knew him well, but I feel like my impression was correct, because you see a lot of the posts on Instagram and a lot of them say the same thing, that he was very humble. So wouldn't you want to be talked about like that? Like if you're going around and you're acting like, you know, oh, I'm X amount of years in the game, or I've done this, or I've done that. People don't compliment you for being arrogant. You know what I mean? Like people don't like that shit. No. Like arrogance is not something that people admire in people. Humility is definitely something people admire. And let's say you just started writing. Nobody knows who you are. Like, let's say you started writing today. Granted, like there's a level of humility that's already built in, because, you know, what are you going to be arrogant about? I just started writing 2 hours ago, right?
Right.
But at the same time, if you start right there and you start carrying yourself in a humble way, and you're like, hey, you know, treating everybody with respect, versus 40 years from now, that same guy is still writing and he still carries himself the same way. He doesn't feel like, you know, some kid goes, oh, can I sign can you sign my black book? And fuck it, man, $20, or, you know, I don't know if anybody does that.
Right.
No, not hating on you if you do. I'm not trying to be an asshole. This is not an example that I've heard, but whatever. But if you're treating everybody like shit because you feel like you've earned it, like nobody likes that.
Yeah. I feel like there's people who attempt to be, and then there's those that are. They just are. I grew up arrogant. I think a lot of our growing up, you know, the early years we grow up, you know, just so ill-informed and so arrogant. I know I did. And it carried small attributes of that arrogance stayed with me till very recently, and how I would act in my personal relationships and all that. But, you know, just being aware of it, pulling the covers off of that shit is the only way to be able to correct or modify. But you're absolutely right, man. There is nothing better. There is nothing better.
I think like arrogance does come with what we do. Also, it's sort of a natural, and I know I have a lot of cringeworthy moments that like, even when I think about them now, you know, you get that feeling of embarrassment, you know, you're like, oh, and you kind of relive that moment for a minute. You're like, how could I have said something like that to somebody? You know, and a lot of them are those sort of arrogant moments where like, I thought I was projecting this sort of like arrogant thing that I thought I was supposed to have. Cause like, that's what you run into a lot in graph culture, especially when you meet a lot of writers and you run into these sort of like arrogant type of situations. Like if you go up to a writer in a yard and you're like, hey, how's it going, man? What do you write? And they're like, what do you write? And you're like, fuck.
Nothing anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, Jesus Christ, man.
You know, you brought up a good point too, because like I think it was our first session we ever had, you made a comment that was like, and just because this is the discussion and that we implore you to adopt these values as far as modifying the way you maybe were acting or treating people or the culture in a whole, doesn't mean it just happens overnight. So it's like grasping the concept of something. Don't be turned off by it because you're still acting in a way that you don't approve of. Like, fuck, I'm not trying to be that guy anymore. Like, those are those defects that we've built inside of ourselves that have cultivated and grown for so many years. It takes some time to alter that and to modify that. So, like for myself, as an example, I might still be driving and that person cuts me off like, mother son of a bitch. Yeah. I want to roll down my window and tell him what time it is. Then I stop myself, take a breath, like, all right, that's not who I am. It doesn't mean I'm just going to I'm going to not apply these same principles to my life today. It just means I got some work to do, and it takes time to get to that point. So by no means, even if you grasp this concept and you agree with the things that we're talking about today, don't think because you act out like this or that today, tomorrow, the next day, next month, that doesn't mean that you don't want this. It just takes time, like anything else. Like anything else to master, to adopt, whatever the fuck. It just takes time. So it's, go easy on yourself too.
Yeah.
Go easy. We're our own worst critics. We can be so hard on ourselves in all the ways too.
Well, that's such a good point, because like changing the way you do things is not like you could have these wake up moments. And I think a lot of people that are sort of coming to realize certain things, whether it's how you've carried yourself or you want to implement new kind of like life. What the fuck is you just want to change things in your life. Like, let's say you're an arrogant person and you're like, you know what, dude, I never fucking thought about that. Maybe I do want to carry myself in a humble way. Mm-hmm. And you decide right then you're going to do that. It's a really good point to say, go easy on yourself and give it time because it takes a long time. Like, you don't just change some shit that you've been living. There was a point in my life where I lacked confidence in a lot of areas, and I carried myself in a way that wasn't confident, and I got tired of it. And I was like, I don't want to be not confident in these areas. So I just decided, I said, I'm a confident person in this aspect of my life. Even though I wasn't, I just told myself that I was, and I tried to live as if I was until I became confident.
There you go.
And it took a long time. It took years, If you say, I want to be humble, and you're not naturally humble, just start being humble until it becomes who you are. I mean, it's like, there's a cliche that says fake it till you make it. And that's misused a lot. And it gets misused in a way where,
it's taken out of context.
Yeah. Or so, like pretending that you have more money than you have, or things like that. Like, that's not really what I'm talking about. It's just sort of like, if you want to change your life and implement these things into your life, just be those things until they become natural for you. And like you said, cut yourself some slack. Just check yourself. If you're like, oh shit, that was the old way that I do things. That's not how I do things anymore. And then learn from those things and then move on.
Yes.
So just to make sure we're keeping this on point with what we're talking about, this all applies to building a culture in every way. And this is sort of like you as an individual making the change And this is another thing that's kind of cliche, like be the change you want to see in the world or whatever that is. Yeah. Be the change you want to see in the culture. So if you want the culture to be better, then you need to be better as an individual, because even though there's tens of millions or I don't know, tens of millions, there's a shitload of people writing. Mm-hmm. You're not going to do anything unless you change yourself. Yeah. So you change yourself, you influence somebody else to change themselves. That shit spreads and spreads and spreads. Let's say you have a big, strong company culture, not company, crew culture within your crew. Other crews see and they're like, dude, those guys and girls or those people they got it together. Everybody's on board. Everybody's like fucking happy to be around each other. There's no bickering, no nothing.
Right.
We got to get our crew on board like that.
Exactly.
They start implementing those things. That spreads.
There you go.
That spreads. And then that's how the whole culture gets better.
And
it starts with one person.
Exactly right.
You.
That's right. And by you spreading that to, say, your right-hand man and then your crew and then your neighborhood and then the culture, you're increasing your odds. So if you want to improve that we just spoke about, like I want to treat other people with more respect. I want to show some humility here. I want to whatever, but it's been more difficult for me. Yeah, well, check it out. If you surround yourself with people who challenge you to grow and people who support you and that are constantly positive, and you guys wake up in the morning like, fucking, let's go after it. And just you're constantly surrounded by like-minded individuals. Your odds are that much greater that you're going to get this and get this that much faster. And consistent discipline. I mean, let's just kind of like circle back to those values, like constantly, consistently checking in with everyone closest to you. Like everybody matters because they fucking do. Discipline. Everybody has been consistently thorough, honest, discipline, consistency, all those things that each individual can keep bouncing off of each other. So, let's just say there's 4 of us at the table. Not all of us are going to wake up fucking on fire every single day. But if 3 of us are, that one cat who's a little bit lower, we can pull his ass up. And vice versa, every day, all day. And you just keep that fire burning. Shit's going to happen. Shit's going to hit the fucking fan. Life is going to get real. Life happens. You pick that person up. You pick that person up. You pick that person up. So everybody fucking matters.
Yeah, not everybody's good at self-regulating. And I guess that kind of comes down to also what you were saying, how everybody, well, it doesn't come down to it, but like the idea that everybody matters just because this new writer hasn't put in a lot of work, it doesn't mean that he could have that humility and that positive attitude that
the crew needs right now.
That the crew needs, or that like the 40-year veteran, he's all jaded and he's kind of lost his way in terms of humility and whatever the case may be. Maybe this new writer is somebody that's all fucking zenned out and shit, and he's or she, I don't like just saying he. Yeah. It's like this person may bring exactly that to the table, Maybe they don't, but I mean, it's like if you're just only looking at, he's got these like kind of whack throwies, but like he'll get there. Mm-hmm. And that's all you're really looking at. You don't know, like that person could have all kinds of awesome fucking life experience, They can know all kinds of cool shit that you could learn from.
Yeah.
And they could, like you said earlier, they could be the one that is carrying the crew down the line. Yeah. So I mean, like keeping everybody on the same level.
Thinking big about it. Not thinking so small. So like just this weekend. Not so future tripping on like, oh my God, what's it going to be like in 20 years? But setting that foundation for the cat who hasn't walked in the door yet, or the one who hasn't even been born yet. Yeah. That there's no telling where they're going to fucking take it.
That's true. Because, fuck, dude, they might not even be on this earth yet.
Right.
That's a trip.
But to have value, to provide some kind of a value, like if we were to take it back to where you started this, you decided at a certain point that you wanted to bring more to the table, that you wanted to provide some kind of a value or service to people besides yourself, while improving your trade and your mastery and what you do, at the same time allowing your, for lack of a better term, your cup to overflow and to provide for other people around you. What a beautiful thing to provide that value and to make that mark. Like you think you made a mark already, which you fucking did. There is no telling what is to come from you having that pure intention and wanting to be of service in that way to other cats. And then ultimately, as a whole, it only can benefit us all. So it's, I challenge anybody listening to check yourself and to see what are your core values and how do you carry yourself and ultimately inspire and set an example for those closest to you and your crew. And how is that improving you guys' meeting today, your yard session tomorrow, the way you even take that back home. That's another thing is oftentimes somebody's best qualities and characteristics can be left at home and not brought to the crew and vice versa. And so how can you harness those best qualities of yourself and bring them with you to the places that are most important and will be of most use for whatever you're dealing with at that moment,
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Not kind of. That is interesting because if you think about it, like, I bet there's a lot of people, and I kind of feel like I was sort of this way too, is like, my dog is distracting me, man.
Little yapper.
He's grumpy over there. I feel like when I first started writing, I was a certain kind of person, but then I projected a different kind of person when I was in the culture, like I don't know. I think maybe that's probably something that's pretty common where people, they think they have to be a certain way, and they might be leaving a lot of stuff out that could be valuable by thinking like, oh, I have to carry myself like a graffiti writer, whatever the fuck that is, There's a lot of people that are kind of like not pushed, but they're put into this culture that a lot of the behavior is counter to but it's kind of counter to what they really are, So I think that,
that's a very, very strong point to what we had said about us all pulling the rope in the same direction and us all being on board in this culture, but you can still maintain your individuality. That there are so many parts of, I can attest to this as well, that when I first went to like a meeting and felt like this is real now. I'm going to a crew meeting. I'm a part of a group that we're really fucking serious about this shit. You keep this poker face, this whatever that facade of like I'm a writer. I'm like I'm hard. I'm fucking strong. I'm not weak. Okay, so you get so good at that you lose all the things that you really are. Like, wait, I'm actually a really nice guy. I got a lot I can contribute here if I let that nice guy shine. Like, why do I have to be? Yeah, if I got to put him up at some point, trust me, I can put him up. But until then, why don't you be your fucking self?
Yeah.
Be a nice guy. Show them what you can bring to the table right now. Because, you may be leaving all the best things that this crew can benefit from at home to bring what you think they want to see. Just like with our visuals, right? Are you painting what you want to paint, what your heartbeat and your pulse is like allowing you to fucking create here? Or are you just painting what you believe you need to paint to fit in and to be accepted in the situation? But ramble, just don't forget how important your own personal individuality and identification and your own blueprint. We all have our own fucking thumbprint on this whole thing. So you can still be very much a part of this culture and riding this fucking wave together with all of us. We can all be riding this wave with you and still have our own fucking fingerprint.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I kind of wonder how many people do leave the best parts of themselves at home and they come, like they just get put on a crew and they're like, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
But inside they're like super excited and they don't want to show.
Right.
They don't want to be like too excited. They want to be like, yeah, I'm down.
You know what I picture when you say that? Like a flame. and then you put a box over that bitch.
Yeah.
And what happens? You just snuff that shit out. And all you're left with is smoke and soot. So it's like, let that fucking flame burn. As long as that's a positive fucking torch and you're just trying to spread nothing but positivity and creation and whatever, and just be yourself. Yeah. I don't know how else better to say it.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, I feel like all of that stuff ties into creating a better culture. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up, right?
Yeah, I think we've done a really good job of, doing what we can to express what we believe is important about these things and how we are applying it to what we're doing right this moment.
Yeah.
And we're reaping the benefits from it, internally, and then watching it grow.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day, man.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we were going to do a Q&A at the end, but like shit's getting all hectic around here, so we'll have to put that off to the next episode.
Yep.
But if you heard the last episode, we are starting to take questions, and if we feel like the questions are in line with the mission of the podcast, then we're going to answer those questions on the episode. We should be able to get to them next week. But
yeah, and we also very much appreciate you guys continuing to spread the love and what value you get from these sessions with the guy next to you, the girl next to you. We've been seeing this catch fire rather quickly, and we are very grateful for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any questions, you can send them to graffitimachine@gmail.com. That's graffitimachine@gmail.com. We gave a different address last time, but that shit's getting lost. We have a couple questions in there that we're going to look through. Yeah, send them in. Keep it relevant. Well, send them in. If you listen to the podcast, you know what kind of stuff we're trying to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't have anything else. What do you think?
Stay up, stay live, and yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you all very much for the continued support, and we will be back soon.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Peace.